It was masochistic, but I couldn't stop myself. 30 minutes on the Concept C2 rowing machine, then 30 minutes on the damn treadmill. Every day for the last 9 months. The only thing that changed was the music. I didn't have a smartphone, but I had an old MP3 player that I loaded with everything I could find to drown out the anger. Or maybe it would be more accurate to say to drown out the pain. But the anger seemed to grow with each passing day, pushing the pain into the background. Revenge scenarios played out in my head, and heavy metal drowned out the reality around me. I could do both types of training automatically, without believing or concentrating on what I was doing. Every day for an hour, I was in a self-induced trance, wallowing in the rage caused by my wife's betrayal. After a quick shower at the gym, I would walk 3 miles to work. It would have been more practical to drive, but I found that the time spent walking helped me calm down. It usually took 58 minutes, a little longer in bad weather. The pace wasn't fast, but it was enough to keep my heart rate steady. After work, I walked the 2 miles home at a more leisurely pace. Weekends disrupted my routine a bit, but I filled the time by doing a little more around the house than usual. I spent more time mowing the lawn, trimming the bushes, and edging the edges. Small tasks that I usually ignored began to attract my attention. Painting and caulking became an important time-filling activity. My MP3 player became my best friend, and I made good money working as a Volvo mechanic. I specialized in commercial diesel engines and always had all the necessary certifications. I earned enough to pay for my 2 daughters' college education, but we took out a second mortgage so the girls wouldn't be burdened with student loans. You could say that music was the cause of my marital problems. My wife Robin prefers classical music, which I can't stand. For her sake, I tried to like it for several years, but it didn't work. Okay, we have different tastes in music. That shouldn't have ruined our marriage, but she decided to move on. She started dating people who shared her musical tastes, which led her to join local bands and get involved in their activities. The band was planning a concert tour, and she started signing up for everything she could. Of course, she didn't even think to ask me to accompany her. When the trip started involving overnight stays, I felt the need to do a little investigation. Serge Gorski was a pianist. He taught at a local college and played in several classical orchestras in the area. He regularly traveled to New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore for performances. My wife was in love with him. Although she hid it for a long time, it wasn't hard for me to guess that she was actually his personal travel companion. After gathering all the facts, I waited for the right moment and laid it all out for her. "Honey, we need to talk." Of course, it didn't go as I expected. She didn't deny anything. She admitted everything and more or less said, "So what?" I'm not a very smart person. I didn't know how to respond to her reaction. I expected remorse and repentance. Instead, I got indifference and arrogance. At that moment, our lives changed. At first, I was overcome with grief and sorrow. The pain was unbearable, but I held on. I didn't say anything to my daughters or anyone else. Robin continued to live as if nothing had happened. She cooked, cleaned, and did all the housework as usual. The only change was that I now slept in the guest room. Robin had never worked, so she spent all her free time with her friends. Although we still lived in the same house, we were more like brother and sister than husband and wife. Her trips and outings became increasingly daring. In photos in newspapers and local magazines, Serge and Robin were portrayed as a couple. There was no mention of me or that she was married. Over time, my pain gradually turned to anger, and the anger grew to the point where it was difficult to control. I didn't start drinking. I started going to the gym. I lost 46 pounds. I was in the best shape of my life. I stopped taking my blood pressure and cholesterol medication. At home, I only ate dinner, and it was easy to get used to Robin's culinary delights. For every pound I lost, I gained 5 pounds of bitterness. I became an angry, miserable bastard. Even my friends and colleagues started avoiding me. And then I met Seymour. Seymour had been a regular at the gym for about 2 months when I spoke to him. I kept more or less to myself while I worked out and hardly spoke to anyone. Some of us would nod casually to each other or sometimes bump fists quickly. Seymour didn't interact with anyone. Sometimes I noticed him talking to himself. When you have headphones in your ears, you don't notice that you're singing along or talking out loud. One day he noticed that I was smiling when he believed, and from then on we developed a light, casual relationship. We started working out together on the treadmill, and then I gradually got him into the rowing machine. He was as focused on his workouts as I was, and I quickly discovered that we had the same motivation. We started drinking coffee after our workouts and sometimes even had lunch together. My friendship with Seymour made my life much easier. I finally had someone I could share my feelings with. I could let off steam. However, this didn't soften the situation. It only made me angrier. Seymour didn't run on the treadmill. He didn't run at all. Physically, he was capable of running, but psychologically, he didn't want to. His wife, Tricia, was an avid triathlete. About 5 years ago, she got into fitness, and it became her life. She spent as much time as possible on her bike, in the pool, and on the treadmill. The worst part was that she didn't do it alone. There were marathons and triathlons all the time, and she participated in as many as she could. Of course, Seymour was never invited. Gene Dickens was a world-class triathlete and was happy to offer Tricia his services as a coach. It wasn't hard for Seymour to figure out that they were driving the same car, staying at the same hotel, having dinner together, and attending business meetings. He talked to his wife. She told him to get over it. Everything came to a head one evening after work when Seymour and I were sharing a plate of ribs. Robin was in Washington with Serge, and Tricia was in Hawaii with Gene Dickens at the Ironman competition in Kona. The ribs would have been better with cold beer, but we made do with unsweetened tea. You know, John, we're a pathetic pair of cuckolds. Seymour didn't laugh when he said it, just shook his head and looked a little glum. Damn it, Seymour, I'm not a cuckold. Come on. What do you call two guys who know their wives are cheating on them and have come to terms with it? I froze for a moment, believing his words. I waved casually to the waitress. Bring us a couple of beers, please. Seymour, I'm not a cuckold. I won't be a cuckold. Prove it. John, we're both miserable cuckolds who drown our sorrows in painful workouts. Do your daughters know what's going on? When was the last time you talked to them? Does your wife talk to your daughters? Thank God I don't have any kids to worry about. I raised my cold bottle of Yuengling. What are you suggesting? Seymour just shrugged and took another rib. I started the weekend as usual, working in the yard. I didn't know when Robin would be back, and I didn't care. I assumed she wouldn't be back for the weekend. After a light lunch, I met Seymour at the gym. Tricia wouldn't be back for another 5 days. She told Seymour that triathletes needed to rest or something like that before the airline would let them fly. He knew it was mostly nonsense, but he didn't want to interrupt her. We never finished our workout. I've had enough. Damn it, I just can't and won't live like this anymore. Seymour grabbed a towel and headed for the shower. I hadn't even finished rowing, and he was already dressed and running out of the gym. He was right. I knew we had to do something. I spent all Sunday thinking. I came up with ideas and immediately found reasons to reject them. The best idea was to just take everything and disappear, but I felt that would leave a huge void in my soul. I needed some kind of revenge, but on whom? It had to be all of them. I had to deal with 4 different people. Physically, I could never hurt Robin. It's just not in my nature. I was sure Seymour felt the same way about Tricia. However, with the 2 guys, it was different. Murder was out of the question, but how could I hurt them in a way that would matter? Suddenly, it all became clear. I quickly ran to the garage and found what I needed, a hammer with a round head. Robin came home on Sunday evening, beaming with happiness. She unpacked her things, took a shower, etc., but didn't share her impressions of the weekend with me. I didn't bring it up. After she went to bed, I stayed up watching TV. John, I'm not going to do this. You're crazy. You're nuts. I don't care how bad it is. I'm not going to kill anyone. No, no. Seymour, you're not listening to me. We're not going to kill anyone. We're just going to slow them down a little. That's not what you believe. I saw the movie Strangers on a Train. William Bendix and the other guy turned out to be murderers. What you're proposing is the same thing. I'm not going to do that, John. That was Farley Granger, not William Bendix, and we're not going to kill anyone. Why would we do that? And what would we accomplish? All right. Seymour, why is your wife so attracted to that guy? What does he have that you don't that makes her want him? You know very well what it is. He's a world-class athlete. I can't compete with him. I'm just a forklift driver and overweight. So he's using his status as a world-class athlete to seduce and steal your wife. Do you think that's fair? No! Seymour, this guy believes he's better than everyone else, that he can take and use any woman he wants. That's extremely disrespectful, and you don't want to hurt him. He's worn you down, and you're just going to let him get away with it. John, I can't confront him. That's the point. You don't have to. I'll do it. What do I get in return? Well, there's a world-famous pianist who might need some professional finger manipulation. Can you do that? That depends on whether I have to use a sledgehammer. Seymour, use whatever you want. So we had a deal. Seymour was still a little unsure, so I said I'd take care of Jean first, and then he'd feel better about taking on Serge. We spent another 2 hours over ribs, sharing all the personal information we had. There were a lot of gaps in our plan. The problem was that neither of us had the slightest idea what we were doing or how to do it. Jean was the biggest problem because of his physical characteristics. I had pretty much decided that I was going to need some kind of equalizer. Now that I had a new special project in my life, I completely forgot about my wife and her lover. I took 10 days of accumulated vacation time. I focused on Gene Dickens. It turned out to be much more complicated than I had imagined. He had a regular 9-to-5 job as an insurance agent, but the rest of his day was much more intense. Some days he would ride his bike for hours when he found the time. He ran in the mornings and spent 3 evenings a week at the local sports club, swimming until the pool closed. On rainy days, he worked out at the local gym. Of course, he met with Tricia at her apartment 2 or 3 times a week. While I was busy following Jean, Seymour was checking on Serge. We met regularly at the gym and worked out, but we didn't discuss how things were going. We didn't even have each other's phone numbers. That was part of the plan. The only thing we had in common was our membership at the same gym. Time passed, and I had to make a decision. He always took different routes. He never took the same route twice. The best I could come up with was the YMCA after his swim practice. He parked his car behind the building. I spent a lot of time looking for security cameras. I found a few in front of the building and to the side, but I didn't see any in the back. I discreetly bought a stun gun on Craigslist, but I wasn't sure if it worked or how to test it. It was a risk I had to take. At least it came with instructions. Feeling a little reckless, I bought a balaclava for $10. We ran on the treadmill for about 30 minutes, chatting about nothing in particular, when I felt it was time to get down to business. Seymour, I believe you need to take 10 days off as soon as possible. I don't want to know where you're going, but you have to tell me the dates. Wherever you go, use your credit cards. A lot. By the time we finished another 30 minutes on the Concept C2 rowing machine, Seymour was beaming. Now I had to decide where I was going to go. It was raining. Light rain, but enough to get everything wet. It was almost 10 o'clock, and at any moment Gene Dickens could walk through the back door of the YMCA. Gene's car, an Outback, was the only one in the back parking lot. I checked again and still couldn't find any security cameras. Just in case, I put on a balaclava. When he saw the flat tire, he flew into a rage. The stun gun worked exactly as advertised, and 5 minutes later I was on my way home. It didn't make the morning paper, but there was a short article in the evening news about a local resident who had been attacked and injured last night behind the YMCA. Measures were taken to install surveillance cameras in the area to prevent similar incidents in the future. Nothing was said about the nature of his injuries. No suspects or motives were identified. I had no idea where Seymour was or when he would return. The hammer, stun gun, and balaclava were discarded in 3 different trash cans in the city center. My boss at work was not thrilled when I told him I was going to take a 3-week Volvo Penta training course in Orlando. He didn't understand how a course on marine engines would benefit him. I told him I would pay for the course myself and use my accumulated vacation time. He was still unhappy. I left a note in Seymour's locker at the gym, explaining that I would be away until the end of June. Robin, I need to go to Orlando for 3 weeks for a course. Would you like to come with me, or would you rather stay home and relax? John, it's the middle of the summer concert season. You know how much I love the events in the park. I'd rather stay here. You'll be in class most of the time anyway, right? Yes. It's hot and humid there in the summer. I understand why you don't want to go, but I felt I should ask. Thank you, dear. I appreciate your offer, but I think I'll be more comfortable here. Maybe later in the summer we can take a short trip somewhere. A weekend in New England or something like that. Of course, the conversation went exactly as I expected. Now on to the next phase of the plan. There was no more news about Gene Dickens. I left at dawn on Saturday and planned to get to Orlando in 2 days, including a stop at the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga. I had to prioritize. Fortunately, the school had arranged a long-term rental that included a small kitchen. I didn't want to eat out every day. I called Robin and let her know I had arrived safely. The local newspaper charged $1 a month for access to the online version. As soon as I settled in, I paid for the subscription. Starting tomorrow, I would keep a close eye on the news from home, paying particular attention to police reports. I couldn't wait to find out if Seymour had kept his end of the bargain. I also wanted to know if he had to answer to the police for the incident with the Dickens. There was a Planet Fitness gym a mile from the hotel. I was able to use a guest pass. The first week of vacation was boring. The second week was interesting, and the third was just great. Of course, I'm not talking about school. Everything there was top-notch. I read the entire newspaper every day looking for something interesting. There was a concert at the Battle of Brandywine organized by my wife's lover. I'm sure she enjoyed the little outing. At the end of the following week, there was an article on the front page of the newspaper about a horrific attack on Serge Gorski, a local university professor and symphony orchestra conductor. The police believed it was some kind of professional revenge, as the only damage he sustained was to both hands. Comparisons were made to the recent attack on Gene Dickens, but no connection between the 2 cases could be found. At that point, there were no suspects. I spent the rest of the evening with 6 cans of black and tan beer, trying to figure out where, when, and how Seymour had done it. I didn't really want to know, but it was fun to believe it. The next morning, one of the administrators at the Volvo Penta school told me that an official from Pennsylvania had called and confirmed that I was indeed enrolled in the school and had not missed a single class. I hadn't expected anything else. I wondered when my wife would tell me. I hadn't heard from her in several days. While waiting for her call, I went out and bought 6 more cans of beer. The call never came. The last week of school turned out to be the best. We spent half the day interviewing with potential employers. I wasn't expecting that. In my opinion, any offer would have been good. My age, experience, and willingness to relocate gave me a slight advantage over most of the other students. I got the offer I wanted, and the choice was easy. I decided to make a short stop on the way home to take a look. There were no more articles about the mysterious attacks in the newspapers. Robin didn't call. Marina Perdido Bay was in Alabama, but Florida was visible across the water. Bill Morgan was eager to show me his pride and joy. In addition to the major repairs and renovations, they had a large, multi-level warehouse. Half a dozen houseboats were moored between the docks. The pride and joy was a small mobile home at the back of the lot, which he said I could use for free. I asked him to tell me more about the storage facility, which he said was very popular with snowbirds. After explaining how it worked, he jokingly asked if I had any experience operating a forklift. I immediately thought of Seymour. The return home was a little disappointing. My loving wife quickly hugged me and kissed me on the cheek. I tried several times to strike up a casual conversation, but Robin responded only with general phrases. She didn't say a word about Serge. I didn't press the issue, just smiled to myself. I took a shower, got changed, and we had dinner. I had been away for 25 days, but it felt like I hadn't left at all. I was looking forward to my morning workout at the gym. He was already there when I arrived. "Good morning, Seymour." "Good morning, John." We continued training for about 20 minutes without saying a word. It was a little strange. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Coffee, Seymour?" "Damn, I thought you'd never ask." We didn't even shower or change. We just grabbed our things and went to McDonald's across the street. "John, how are you?" "Fine. It's like I never left. If I hadn't read about it in the newspaper, I wouldn't have known anything. How about you?" "Quite the opposite. Trisha is furious and taking it out on me. The police completely cleared me, but she's convinced I was involved in the attack on him. She spends more time at his place playing nurse than she does at home. She even stayed there for a couple of nights. In a way, it's kind of relaxing. I'd rather spend time without her than with her. You did a good job on him. His days as a triathlete are over." I wasn't sure. I didn't read what injuries he sustained. "Did the police question you much?" "Of course they did. They checked my phone records and bank accounts, trying to link me to the attack on him. They finally gave up after a week. Trisha was the driving force behind trying to pin it all on me." "Just out of curiosity, where were you?" "I was on a yacht cruise out of Rockland, Maine. Had a great time." "Glad to hear it. I spent 3 weeks in class, 8 hours a day." "So what now, John?" "Well, I don't know about you, but I'm getting out of here. I found a job near Pensacola, and I'm leaving at the end of the week." "Are you going to divorce her?" I'm just going to take my stuff and leave. If she wants a divorce, she can file for it. I wonder if good old Serge will take her back or kick her out." "What about your house and your stuff?" "I'll leave her everything except the money in the bank. She'll get the mortgage, the car payments, the utility bills, and her Kohl's credit card." "Now I have something to think about. You'll let me know where you are, right?" "Sure. By the way, is Serge giving you any trouble?" "No, not really. The day before, I sprayed the cameras in the garage with wasp spray and finished the job with a kitchen meat mallet. 1 quick blow to the head, then half a dozen blows to each arm. I even made sure to get both of his thumbs. He didn't see me. When I left, he wasn't home yet. When I got back from the gym, Robin wasn't home. I took a quick shower and went to work. My boss wasn't thrilled when I handed in my resignation. I emptied all my bank accounts, leaving only a few $100s in each. I closed my credit cards. We usually kept them at 0. After another quiet dinner with my wife, I grabbed a beer and went to my office. I took out my passport, birth certificate, and DD-214. That was all I needed to take with me. My tools from work were in the trunk of my Subaru. All that was left was my clothes and my laptop. Robin was friendly, but still very quiet and reserved. The next morning, she left early. Over a year ago, she stopped telling me where she was going when she left the house. I guess she didn't think I needed to know. It took me less than 30 minutes to load up the Outback. At the last minute, I grabbed George Foreman's grill. It just seemed like a good idea. I was on US 81, not far from Luray, when I decided to let Seymour know I was gone. The message was short. Perdido Bay Marina. Whatever his decision, I was ready to accept it. It only took me a few weeks to settle in. My cell phone was off the whole time. The work was different, but at the same time the same, if that makes sense. I spent most of my free time fixing up the trailer. Everything worked fine, but it needed a little love and attention. The second bedroom became a storage room. About a quarter of a mile from the marina was a small diner that was open 24 hours a day. I ate there almost every meal. Unfortunately, the nearest gym was 7 miles away, so I decided to take up running. I didn't like it, but I did it anyway. At least there were no hills. And then my first guest arrived. "Seymour, you found it." "It wasn't hard, John. GPS led me right here. Bob is your uncle." Who the hell is Bob, I thought. "Are you just passing through or are you staying?" "I'll stay if there's room. I have nowhere else to go." We spent about an hour getting Seymour settled into a spare bedroom, then had dinner at a diner. Seymour had been driving for 16 hours straight and was completely exhausted. The next morning, I let him sleep in. Bill Morgan hired Seymour on the spot. He hated working on a forklift and was more than happy to hand the job over to him. The pay was lousy, but Seymour didn't seem to care. He just needed enough to live on. He had a little cash he'd brought with him. Later, I drove him to Foley so he could open a safe deposit box at the same bank where I had mine. The trailer wasn't secure enough. Tricia continued to insist to the police that Seymour was guilty of the attack on Gene Dickens. They couldn't prove anything. His alibi in Maine was ironclad, and they couldn't find any accomplices. Naturally, the relationship between them quickly deteriorated. Tricia demanded that Seymour leave the house, but he refused. In the end, she moved in with Dickens, and 2 days later, Seymour ran away. I decided it was time to get in touch with my daughters. I called the older one, Clara, first. As soon as I said, "Hello," she hung up. Cora, my younger daughter, was a little more open. She called me a heartless bastard and hung up too. I tried again, but to no avail. At least I wouldn't have to spend money on 2 expensive weddings in the future. I turned off my cell phone again. Seymour and I settled in pretty quickly. Every morning I ran about 5 miles, and then we met at a cafe for breakfast. They prepared a small, low-carb breakfast especially for me. We had lunch whenever it was convenient. After a couple of weeks, everything changed. Argie Martin had been living on the Nordic tug yacht at Pier 16 for the past 6 months. She didn't have a car, so Seymour was happy to give her a ride when she needed to go somewhere. Soon, I lost my dinner companion, and shortly after that, my breakfast companion. It wasn't long before the second bedroom in the trailer was turned back into a storage room. Seymour was happy, and I was happy for him. Every time I tried to talk to him about her, he avoided the subject. Bill Morgan wasn't much help either. He was just glad she paid her dock and utility bills on time. She never asked for any special treatment. Something wasn't right, but as long as Seymour was happy, I didn't want to get involved. I seemed to lose track of time. Almost a year had passed since I left. I had no contact with my wife, daughters, or anyone else back home. Sometimes Seymour, Argie, and I would go out to dinner and always had a good time. I learned that Argie was from Ohio, that she had been married to a military man, and that she had no children. She never mentioned her husband, and I didn't ask. Argie always wanted to go to Foley or Gulf Shores to eat, but she refused to go to Pensacola. It was strange, but I could live with it. On Monday morning, the situation reached a critical point. It had been raining all night, and there was no sign of it letting up. Instead of my usual jog, I put on an old army poncho and wandered into a diner. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when I saw a familiar car pull into the marina. It was a green Subaru Outback belonging to Gene Dickens. A woman who looked like Tricia got out, opened an umbrella, and hurried toward the marina office. A minute later, she opened the door and waved to the driver. Gene got out and limped into the office, trying unsuccessfully to dodge the raindrops. "Damn it, Seymour, answer the phone!" Finally, I got through. "Seymour, you're in trouble. How quickly can you get out of there?" "What the hell are you talking about? Slow down." "Your wife is here, and Gene Dickens is with her. They're in the office talking to Bill right now. You have a choice. You can talk to her or quietly get out of there. I'm sure the rain will help you with that. John, I need 15 to 20 minutes. Can you delay them a little? I'll try. You'd better leave. The next call I made was to Bill. He laughed a little and agreed to send the uninvited guests to my trailer instead of Argy's. I returned to the trailer just as they were leaving the office. Of course, I invited them in and tried to stall for as long as possible. I chatted casually with the man I had beaten, maimed, and crippled less than a year ago, hoping my newly grown beard would hide him. They never said why they had come or why they were looking for Seymour. I didn't ask. The rain turned to gray drizzle as we walked to the pier. The fog made the tugboat barely visible across the bay, but I was the only one looking in that direction. They just stared at the empty space. 5 minutes later, the ship was completely gone. I never introduced myself or told them how I knew Seymour. They didn't ask. I apologized and went to work. Soon they left too. I never saw Seymour again. A few months later, Phil Martin, Argy's brother-in-law, came to see us. He was looking for Warren, Argy's husband. Phil had last spoken to his brother over a year ago. Warren and Argy lived in the Blackwater Bay Marina in Pensacola. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office had received several reports of domestic disputes involving the couple, which then suddenly stopped. Warren Martin was a retired U.S. Air Force veteran, and his pension checks were still being cashed, although no one had seen him or his wife in over a year. I had no idea how he found Argy at the marina. Maybe it was just a hunch. Another 6 months passed. I missed Seymour. The job was stable, but I was bored. I spent my evenings with Black and Tannen, trying to decide whether to look for a partner or maybe try living somewhere else. I avoided bars and never went to church. The gym was a little inconvenient, and the waitresses at the diner weren't interested in me. Finally, I got interested and contacted Volvo Penta again. They had 2 good openings, one in Biloxi, the other in Galveston. I couldn't make up my mind. I was trying to choose between them over lunch when I was rudely interrupted. "Hello, John. I've been trying to reach you." Robin looked old and tired. The last 2 years had been hard on her. "I'm sorry, I wasn't hiding. Why did you come here so unexpectedly?" She placed an envelope on the table. "Your final divorce papers. I thought you might need them. I filed for divorce on the grounds of abandonment after 1 year of marriage." "If you knew where I was, why did you come here? You could have just sent them in the mail." "I don't know. Maybe to close this chapter. You hurt me badly, but I guess I deserved it." "I didn't want that. I just wanted to leave so you could be with Serge. I felt like I was in the way." "Well, you didn't leave me much. No money, no house, which the bank ended up taking. What really pissed me off was that you took George Foreman's grill. I thought your boyfriend could replace it. By the way, where is he?" "Things didn't go well for Serge after the accident. He moved to Estonia about 6 months ago." "Didn't you go with him?" "I wasn't invited." I didn't answer. Serge was a little bitter. He believed you were involved in the attack on him. After that, our relationship cooled off. "And now?" "Clara got married last June and they moved to Ocala. I'm going to move in with them and play grandmother. I decided to make a little detour on the way to give you the documents." What an idiot I was. I sat there like an idiot waiting for some kind of apology. But it never came. It was as if she was still rubbing it in my face, just like she did back then. There wasn't a shred of remorse or regret on her part. "Well, Robin, I'm glad you stopped by. I'm sorry I missed Clara's wedding, but she didn't seem to want me to come. I'm also sorry things didn't work out with Serge. I know how important it was to you. Anything else before you go?" "Yes, I want George Foreman." I decided to drive to Biloxi. It was only a 2-hour drive. The casinos sounded tempting. I gave her that damn George Foreman.